All right, everyone, welcome back to the Synthesis Workshop podcast. My name is Aiden, your host, and today I'm joined by Mario Gaviria. Hopefully, I pronounced that correctly. I'm not really the best with Spanish. How do you pronounce your last name?
Gaviria.
Gaviria.
Yeah,
Okay,
no
thank
worries.
you for the help there. I definitely need to work on some of my pronunciations when it comes to like some European and like Hispanic last names. I can't really do it. I come from a Germanic
Okay.
heritage, so I'm very not well versed in that. But in any case, we're joined by him today, a patent agent, recently graduated from Corinna Schindler's lab, who's now at UVC but was at Michigan, University of Michigan. So yeah, just a brief primer to our audience. This has kind of been something I've been wanting to discuss with someone for a while. The idea of having, if you have a background in chemistry, but perhaps maybe once you think about going to law school or becoming a patent agent, patent attorney, how do you do that, right? So how do you do that? What are the steps to become involved, and what actually is a patent agent, right? So what actually is it? That's today why we brought Mario in, because I'm really looking forward to it. Mario, welcome to the show, and we're really happy to have you on today.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm so excited to be here and chat about this. So hopefully people get excited about patent law.
Yeah, we were briefly discussing beforehand that people don't even really know that this is an option. Really, I think when people think of chemistry and they think of sitting, if at all, like they think about sitting at the bench top for the rest of their career. But there's really a lot more out there, and you're a testament to that. So we're definitely going to discuss all that today. Before we get into that, why don't we start with like your background, just so the audience can kind of feel of your chemistry background, because it's quite a good chemistry background. So it's like, what can you do with this? Well, here are some options. So I guess we'll start with your general background, where you grew up, and then maybe your initial interest in chemistry, where you did your undergrad, and etc.
Yeah, definitely. So I was born in Colombia and I moved to the United States when I was around 5 years old in Miami. So that's where I grew up. Went to high school there. I ended up going to undergrad out in California at Pomona College. And so I always was interested in chemistry. I initially thought I wanted to be a chemical engineer, but then I took
Classic.
physics, and that was that was the end of that path. That's organic chemistry and did organic chemistry research and kind of fell in love with just mechanisms, structures, and just how you can build things from commodity chemicals that exist. So I was really interested in total synthesis, pharmaceutical development. So I did a lot of research in undergrad, and I knew by the end of my career that I wanted to go to grad school. I ended up applying to a bunch of schools, visited Michigan, and I actually really loved Michigan. It's a great department. There's lots of organic chemists there, lots of total synthesis going on. But like as you said, Corinna is moving to UBC now, so things are shifting a little bit. But yeah, so I was interested in total synthesis, went to grad school and joined Corinna Schindler's lab. And so there my dissertation focused on the total synthesis of complex natural products. We can't get too much into the specifics because it's still ongoing, but hopefully, it's getting close to being done. But it was a very intense, hardcore synthetic organic chemistry, lots of steps, lots of difficult reactions, lots of scale ups, but it was a great experience, and I had a great time really getting into the weeds of the chemistry and being creative on how you can come up with different syntheses or different strategies to access the intermediates or final products that you want to get to. And so I guess going from there, I initially thought about, do I want to go to academia? Do I want to go to industry? Do I want to be a researcher for the rest of my life? And so thinking about all those things is kind of how I started to explore alternative career paths. So I looked at consulting, I looked at, maybe venture capital, and then also patent law. So kind of stumbled upon that because I ended up taking a class at Michigan where, it was an intro to patent law class, and I did it as one of my electives. So I was interested in seeing, what is this about? And I actually really enjoyed it. Ended up taking a higher level IP class called, I think it was like IP strategy or IP management, something along those lines. Really enjoyed that class. So I kind of knew, okay, this is kind of where I want to go. And then ended up being a fellow at the tech transfer office at Michigan. So I was working on like early stage commercialization of inventions coming out of Michigan labs, which was really cool. So I could see get invention disclosures from, a PI down the hallway. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Like I'm helping to work on this early stage stuff. So, organic chemist at heart, total synthesis, love it. But, I also like to apply it in different ways, as I stated.
Yeah. It's total synthesis is a beast. We recently put out a video of my total synthesis of phlegmidine B. Listen, I'm organometallic chemist by training, and total synthesis is real deal. I mean, it is I've never even like really applied it. But thinking about retrosynthesis and forward synthesis is definitely an acquired skill. Like you got to practice that, but the chemistry there is real. I guess. Well, really quickly, how was the change up? You grew up in Miami and went to school in California. I don't know. Was that Southern California though? You did your undergrad, or
Yeah, it's like
and then
45 minutes east of LA.
okay,
So yeah,
and
yeah.
then going to Michigan though. How did you deal with those winters? Was it? I mean, was something you were prepared for, or how did you deal with that?
I mean, it wasn't too bad. I just kind of like
Okay.
bought a big jacket and dealt with it. I lived like really close to campus. It would maybe be a 5 to 10 minute walk depending on the
Okay.
day. So it wasn't too bad.
Wasn't too
You
bad.
adapt and adjust. And I'm in Chicago now, so clearly I didn't mind too much with the
Yeah.
weather.
And that's even windier there. Windy
Yeah.
City is real. I don't think people have never been to Chicago. That those winters can be real windy. But yeah, thank you. So thank you for sharing your background. So let's kind of dive into this a little bit then. First, first question that I have is, you mentioned, right, total synthesis by training. I mean, you surely then you're kind of thinking about going into pharmaceutical sciences. Not so much academia, but perhaps we can talk about both of those. Like what I don't want to say what discouraged you, but what was kind of uninteresting about them, and for you to seek different career paths.
It wasn't that they were uninteresting. I liked the idea of it, but I also wanted to have a career and a job where there was more flexibility where you could work from. So, right now, all I need is really a computer and a phone, and I can work from anywhere I am versus, being in a lab or having to go to on-site somewhere. So that was kind of one of the bigger motivators. The other thing, which is kind of a smaller thing, is I didn't know if I wanted to be around chemicals for like the longevity of my career. So those were kind of the two motivating factors. And as much as I love doing chemistry, I feel like once it started to turn into a job, it almost like wasn't as fun as it used to be. So when you were doing summer research, you were discovering all these things, you were investigating pathways, you were able to be creative. And then when it got down to the nitty gritty of like, okay, now I have to do like these 10 reactions, then I have to do this, and I have to set up this large scale other birch reduction. It was just getting to be like a job. And then it kind of lost some of the magic to it. So that's kind of how it started. And then, I thought about, okay, long term, where do I want to be? What I want my career to look like?
Yeah, I think those are really, you raise a really, really good point, because one of the, I say this a lot too, but I feel like one of the silver linings of COVID is that people realize how efficient you could be working from home. Like, I mean, a lot of office jobs, do you really need to go into the office? Like, do you really, like, what I mean? There's really so much you can do from home. And that really is such a benefit that a lot of chemists may not think about. It's like, yeah, you can love to do chemistry, but you have to like get up and drive to work, where it'd be a lot more convenient if you do it from home. And people may say, well, you're not as productive. You know what? I don't know. I actually don't really agree with that mindset, but I think people could be just as effective, if not more effective, working from home, because they're kind of in their own space. You can kind of make your own schedule, right? You're really thinking about your mental health there. So that's a great point. I don't think people really think about. But also, yeah, it's doing chemistry for a long time. I feel like it definitely can lose its magic a bit, because I hear you there. Like, I remember doing undergraduate research with my advisor in the summer, and it was so fun, right? It was kind of like, not that it was no carefree in the world, but it was like everything was new to me.
Yeah.
And now it's like coming towards the end of my PhD, another year and a half or so, and it's like, all right, this is like kind of becoming a job now. It's like kind of annoying at sometimes, sometimes you just don't feel like doing it. So I definitely hear that. So those are really good points. And yeah, not being around chemicals, like, is definitely better than, being not around chemicals is definitely better than being around chemicals, for sure. Right.
Yeah.
So it definitely has a toll on you.
I definitely don't miss opening up the chemical closet and getting all the different smells from all the different chemicals.
I swear, I think my sense of smell is actually tainted now. I don't like the amount of like ether and ethyl acetate, and we have well ventilated hoods, but it still like has a long-term effect.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't even really, my smell, I don't know if it's, my smell's better now because I can like smell like part per million ethereal solvents, or like I can't, like, where it's like worse now. I don't even really know, but so okay, so career wise, you weren't really, you weren't not necessarily interested in going into pharma or academia. So, what was that kind of initiative then to look at, like, what was kind of the first step for you? Was it the IP class? Like, what kind of, because I feel like it's like, where do you even start, right? Like what was kind of like that catalyst for you then?
Yeah, so I'm the type of person that I need to try something to see if I like it and if I want to like go forward with something like that. So, for example, in undergrad, I was so excited about biochemistry lab, and
Mm.
then I took biochemistry lab and didn't really like it because it was so distinct from organic chemistry. Like there were no mechanisms. You were using all these kits, and I was like, okay, biochemistry is not for me. So the same way, I think I first started with a consulting class. So I went to, I had a lot of friends that had gone into consulting, so they told me try that out. And I didn't love it as much because I feel like you weren't as close to the science. It was just more of a general overview of like, here's a problem that we're trying to solve at a scientific company. How do you solve it? Or like,
Mm.
what's the workaround there? And it wasn't really the nitty gritty of the science. So I took that class, was like, okay, not for me. Thought about venture capital for a little bit and did some research. I also considered that wasn't for me. Again, I want to stay close to the science because I do really like thinking about chemistry.
What's like
And
venture capital though? I'm not really like
so like
what.
investing in startups, basically
Oh,
like
okay.
yeah, you're basically handling capital for an investment company or investors that are looking to put their money into different biotech startups or pharma startups. And so there is like some scientific aspects to it, but it's not,
So
getting into
you'd be like the bridge between like the startup company who knows a lot of the science or whatever, and then the investors that want to invest. You're kind of like
basically
that
something along
bridge.
those lines.
Okay,
Yeah.
I gotcha.
And so then I ended up taking a patent law class. I think what actually happened is someone came to Michigan and gave a seminar. I think he was a patent attorney, and that intrigued me. So I ended up
How'd you know?
studying.
So how'd you know that a patent attorney was coming to Michigan then? Like, how you kind of? I guess at that point you were kind of well in the
So
like.
the department would host, I think monthly or semi. I don't remember like the frequency, but they would have lectures come in of different people, like from industry, academia, alternative careers. And he came, and I remember seeing it on one of the emails, like we're gonna have a patent law chat. So I was like, oh, let me go and see what this
Oh,
is
so
about.
this is the chemistry department doing it
Yeah, this
though.
is the chemistry
Oh,
department.
okay, awesome. Well, there you go. There's for Michigan. They got some a lot good diverse. You know,
Yeah, so that was like kind of like the
that's really
first
cool.
initial. That was the first initial exposure to it, and then I did know someone in the Stevenson lab that also was kind of interested in it, and he was a
Okay.
year above me, so we kind of talked about it together, and then yeah, so I ended up taking the intro to patent law class, and that one was a little more. You're not doing chemistry because it's like a generic class, so you're just learning the basics, like cut and dry patent law. So it was a little, if you're a first timer, it's like, oh my god, there's all these rules and statutes and regulations. But then, you have to think about it in the context of you're just learning the basics, and then you have to think about how do you apply that now, to an actual product or to an actual, pharmaceutical that you want to go forward with. And that's where it gets interesting because you're mixing, okay, here's my scientific expertise and knowledge about what the product is. What is the law, right? And what can we do? How can we get a patent and like how can we move that forward and get it to market? And then also what's the business goal? What are the inventors trying to get out of this? Do they just want a patent? Do they want to go and license this out? Do they want to have a startup? Like what is so it's like you're getting a little bit of everything, and that's kind of exciting to me because you're thinking about all the different aspects at the same time.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that like taking those classes really exposed me to the basics, and then the more advanced class was more into the strategy of how do you take a product, what are the different types of IP, and like how do you go forward with that and make it a successful launch or something along those lines.
Okay. All right. So I think before we get too carried away with like kind of the perhaps how do you get into patent attorney and patent law and patent agency, perhaps we should discuss maybe like terminology so we can
Yep.
have kind of maybe common ground, and then we'll come back to that so
Yep.
for the audience. So maybe let's discuss maybe your position now, like what exactly you do now, and then what that kind of entails. Um, and then let's start there with those details then.
Okay, so my title now is a patent agent,
Okay.
and so I initially started as a scientific advisor. So that's what a law firm will hire a PhD as. It's called scientific advisor, technical advisor, and so you come on as being like the scientific technical matter expert. And so basically, what I was doing is the same. My title has just changed because now I'm registered with the patent office. But what we do is we draft patent applications. So if an inventor comes in and wants to get a patent, they'll usually give us an invention disclosure and we will sit and draft a patent application. I kind of alluded to writing a paper, but it's just in a different form of writing. It's more legalese writing, and there's different sections that correspond to a patent that are not the same as a paper, but it's basically you're kind of doing the same thing.
Sure.
This is the invention, these are the results, here are some examples, here are the methods. Um, so that's one aspect, right? And so you start off with drafting the patent application. You submit it to the patent office, and usually it'll take a while to hear back, maybe 2-3 years, depending on how busy the patent office is with that subject matter. And then you'll get what's called an office action. So that just basically gives you the reasons why the patent office is either accepting or rejecting your patent application, right? So we
Okay.
drafted it, we sent it in. And so you look at that, and usually what you'll do is draft a letter for the client explaining, okay, these are the statutes that the examiner used to reject. These are the references that the examiner used to reject. And these are the possible paths forward. So you usually explain this to the client. They'll come back and either give you instructions, or sometimes you just prepare a draft response and they'll review it. And so then we draft the response to the office action, which is called the reply to office action. So I do that as well. So I'll usually sit there either with instructions or just thinking about it myself. And
Mhm.
you basically provide arguments using technical subject matter, as to why the examiner is wrong, or why the rejections are wrong, or different area. Like there's different statutes and different rules and ways to get around rejections. So
Sure.
we're not going to get too into the nitty gritty of that because that'll take forever. But basically, you're like, okay, what can we move forward with? How do I argue? You write out these arguments. Usually, an attorney will supervise, provide edits, provide feedback, and really bolster the arguments as well. And then we send that back to the patent office.
Mhm.
And then a couple months pass, and then you'll usually get a second office action, and they'll either withdraw the rejections and give you new ones, withdraw the rejections and give you an allowance, which means your patent application can be issued to a patent.
Okay.
And basically, you basically go back and forth until the patent office says, okay, we're going to give you a patent application, we're going to allow this. So the day to day that I do is drafting the patent applications, drafting these reporting letters for the clients, explaining what the patent office is saying, what are the rejections, how can we overcome them, and then drafting the reply back to the patent office to then try to combat those rejections. So that's the majority, and so that's called patent preparation and prosecution, because you prepare the
Okay.
patent and then you're prosecuting it back and forth with the patent office. And
Okay.
so so that's the bulk of what I do. And so going from a scientific advisor to a patent agent, like I said, it's the same work. What happened was I passed what's called the patent bar. And so there is a bar exam. It's like the legal bar that people take after law school,
Mhm.
except it's issued by the patent office. And so you don't have to be a lawyer to take it. You just have to have a technical background. They have different regulations. You can either have like a bachelor's in one of the STEM fields, or then there's like different majors that you can have and combinations that you would have to check out. But that's all you need to actually sit for the exam. And it's a 100-question multiple choice exam that takes 6 hours. It's cut into two chunks. So 50 questions, 3 hours in the morning, 50 questions, 3 hours in the afternoon. And it basically tests all the rules and regulations of patent examination and procedures, which is a
Okay.
little daunting because the book that they use it from is called the MPEP, and it has like maybe 28, 29 chapters. Each chapter can have hundreds of pages. But basically, the gist of it is it's an open book test. So the real test, what they're testing you on, is how fast can you identify what chapter the material is coming from and what subsection of that chapter, because all the questions are basically almost taken directly from the book. So you just have to know, where is it
Where
in
to
the
find
book,
it?
what section, how do I search the PDF that they're giving me, because the system they use is like from the 90s, so you can't control F. You have to like
Uh,
individually go next. Yeah, so it's a little frustrating, but yeah. So basically, you pass that exam, become a patent agent, and that gives you the authority to prosecute patents before the patent office by yourself. You can sign
okay.
off on documents, and you can't give legal advice to clients. You can't provide opinion work, but you can draft and prosecute patent applications. And so that's kind of the gist of what my title is and what I do now. There's other aspects of work that you do in conjunction with attorneys, so like giving an opinion, a freedom to operate opinion. If someone wants to bring a product to market and they want to know that if they're going to infringe on someone's patent, they'll usually come to a law firm, ask to provide a freedom to operate opinion, which is where we look at other patents that already exist. We
Mhm.
compare it to what the product is, the technical specifications, the characteristics, whatever it may be. And we say, okay, this patent may be a little close because of these reasons, but we have this in our product that's different. And so therefore, we're not going to be infringing on that patent for XYZ reason, kind of giving like kind of a wall of protection to make sure they're not getting sued because we've already analyzed what's out there and we know it's not the same.
Mhm. That was an excellent breakdown. It to me, it seems like it's very like almost like word sparring. It's like what exactly was said in this patent, and how does that inflict, or how does that conflict with what we're trying to bring as intellectual property. So maybe let's kind of walk through an example. So let's say I come with um, a pharmaceutical drug that I want to, you know, come to market. I what? So I would have to write an entire patent for it. Like how to like? Is there like I don't know a patent like formula I could or form I could fill out or like how does that work? I guess I would fill it out and then bring it to your company. You would say, "How does this work?" And then
No, usually so an inventor will just come to us and
okay.
whatever
Oh,
you
you
get as
draft
a
it for them.
huh?
You
Yeah,
draft
yeah,
it for
we
them.
draft it for them.
Oh, I got
They
you. Okay,
just
okay.
provide us like with a disclosure, right? It could just be like a paragraph of what the invention is. It could be a paper in a manuscript. It
Mm-hmm.
could be an unpublished paper. It could be lab results. Whatever it is that they're trying to include in that patent, they will usually give it to us and be like, "This is the general invention. Please draft a patent application." And you work with the inventor to kind of hone in on exactly what they want to cover. And so
Okay.
we work on drafting that with them and having meetings. And is this the direction you want to go in or not? Yeah, so we work together as like a team, but we do the drafting ourselves.
I got you. Okay, so it could be the individual like molecule itself, or it could be maybe how it was made. I guess also too is kind of property. How does that kind of work? I
Yeah, so
guess.
it just depends. It depends what already exists
Okay.
out there in the literature. So it could be the molecule itself. It could be a method of forming the molecule or making the molecule. It could be a method of using the molecule. There's different aspects and different ways that you can go and try to protect what you're after. It just depends
Mm-hmm.
what is the goal of the client, and then also
Okay.
what's already out there
Mm-hmm.
or what exists in that space, so that
Okay.
we can know what we can go protect, basically.
Okay. And then okay, so you draft. So then you draft the patent, and then I must. Where does that get sent to then? So you drafted it. Now how does that get checked
So
by
once
someone
it's
else?
approved, yeah, once it's approved, then you file it directly with the patent office, and that can be done
Oh, okay.
online. Yeah, so you just file that online. You provide all the paperwork that we need, all the inventor forms, and then that gets submitted. And like I said, usually, so then there's another thing to like a notation. So there's two different types of patent applications that you can submit. One is called a provisional. So that one is, I almost call it like a draft. That one does not get examined. It does not get published. You just kind of file that to
Okay.
have it on file and have a filing date, because the patent system works on a first to file basis. So whoever files the invention first gets to have the patent. If it's patentable, gets to get the patent because they filed it first. And so some people will file a provisional just to get that filing date, and they may not have all the information yet, but we have the filing date. You can file another provisional maybe 3 months later when you have additional data, but you can claim what's called priority to that filing date, right? So
Okay.
sometimes, so that's a provisional, it doesn't get examined. I would almost consider it kind of like a chem archive that doesn't get reviewed because it's like a draft almost, right? No
Right.
one's seen it, or if people have seen it online,
Right.
but
Right.
in this case, it doesn't get seen. Versus a non-provisional is like a formal patent application that will get published within 18 months. It will get examined, and it will go through the patent process with the patent office. So those are the kind of the two distinctions, of what types of patent applications. So it just depends what the inventor wants at the moment
Mm-hmm.
and what the strategy is of how we can move that forward.
Okay. So I assume then people at the patent office they have to be qualified to kind of, I guess, answer. I mean, not from a law. I mean, I don't know from a law degree, but also technically, they have to. Would they have to be like PhDs and like have their law degree too, or does it kind of depend?
So no, they don't have to have a law degree. I don't even think a PhD is a requirement. I think
Okay.
there's it's what's called patent examiners, and so they have them for all the subject matter areas. But I think even just with a bachelor's, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
I haven't looked at, but I think just even with a bachelor's, as long as they understand the subject matter area, they get trained once they get to the patent office on how to review and how to examine. And I think when you're new, you have like a senior examiner with you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they should have a technical background in, at least generally, in the area that the patent is in,
Mm-hmm.
and then they start reviewing and going through it.
What's kind of nice is, I mean, at least the way you're describing it is like it's when you get rejected, it's pretty seems like it's cut and dry. It's like here's why it was rejected. Here's what, and I also like how you include like the future past is like okay, well, what now? So, how many have you drafted so far? Like how many have you kind of seen?
Patents, I would like 13 or 14, I want to say. I don't
13,
remember
4.
off the top. Yeah, so
Yeah.
13 or 14 across like a wide range of chemical technology. So my
Okay.
background is in synthetic organic chemistry, but I've seen like polymers, resins, coatings, pharmaceutical containers, like everything, like a spectrum of different technology. So you just got to like be able to adapt and catch up on whatever that technology is, or try to understand it. And then
Mm,
if you have questions, you can either speak to the attorney that may understand it more, or also ask questions of the inventor as well.
okay. And so how is that kind of experience anyway? Because you said like you have a background in synthetic organic chemistry, but even myself, when I see polymer science, sometimes I'm like, oh, geez, here we go. Like I don't really. I understand the terminology, but like it's like it's a whole different science, really, honestly.
Yeah.
So how does that how's your experience in synthetic organic chemistry kind of helped you been like in other areas?
I mean, the good part about total synthesis is you have to be able, there were so many different types of reactions that I worked on that
Mm,
I kind of, had a broad exposure to general, mechanisms or reactions or sequences or whatever it may be. And so not only that, but my experience at the tech transfer office when I was working at Michigan there, I was also getting all types of different technology. And so it's just about, just being able, that's what a PhD teaches you, right? To read a paper and catch up on knowledge and be able to, go on from there and be able to understand things. And
mhm.
so I feel like it's a little difficult at first when you first start, but you review whatever the disclosure is. Maybe you look at some papers really quick and try to get the general idea. So I feel like I haven't seen anything where I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. And
Mm,
that's also something like if you know you can't handle technology or you won't be able to understand it, you can just tell that to the attorneys and they'll be fine. They'll be okay. We'll find someone that will be able to handle this because you want to make sure you're doing a good job for the client. So if you
right.
don't understand it, that's like something like you're like, okay, wait, no,
Mhm.
maybe this shouldn't be for me.
Yeah.
So I've had some like more bio heavy cases where I'm like, there's
Mm,
a lot of protein interactions going in here, and I don't feel as comfortable with that.
yeah, I definitely hear that. I would not be comfortable answering those type of questions, but yeah, this is really insightful. So overall, how's been your experience like working as a patent agent? Like how have you how happy are you with the choice like that you've made so far? Kind of go down this road.
I really enjoy it. I think it's a great job. You get, like I said, you get to see firsthand science like that no one else has seen. Sometimes there's startups or companies from professors across universities that you get to see, and you're like, oh, this is actually really cool.
Hmm.
Like people will see this maybe in a couple of years. So that's exciting. You get to work if you like writing and you like detail oriented work and you like thinking about the science generally and getting into the nitty gritty of it. I think it's a good career. And what's nice is you get such a variety of work. So one day I can be working on a polymer, and then maybe the next day I'm working on a small molecule. And so
Mm,
it's never the same thing. So that's something that with total synthesis was getting a little frustrating, doing the same sequence of steps over
uh,
and over and over just to bring up material to be able to do the new stuff was driving me a little insane. So in this, if I don't like a case or it's a frustrating case, I just have to finish it, submit the draft to the patent office or whatever it is, and then I won't hear about it for another couple months,
mhm.
right? And so there's a constant different types of work, patent application drafting, the opinion work. So I think it's a fun job. You get a little bit of everything. You get to do science, you get to do business law, you get to talk to people, you get to collaborate across a team of attorneys. So I think I've enjoyed it a lot, and I
Yeah,
recommend if people like that, like those things, they should explore a career at least.
yeah. I know that I'm like detail oriented like that. I know I certainly would I don't know if I'm necessarily the best writer though. I don't know. Maybe that's a skill I could come across one day. But so what's kind of generally like your work? What's kind of the day to day and generally the workflow? I mean, let's say you hypothetically get someone comes to you with a patent. You have to write the draft, but like how long is the draft and like when when do you send it to the patent office and then when they're done with it, does it come right back to you? Like how does that kind of work then?
Yeah, so it just depends, what the client wants, how detailed they want it, how much
Okay.
information we have to work off of. Most of the ones I've written are like anywhere from like 20 to 40 pages. I haven't
Okay.
had anything that's been super long. So it just depends, yeah, like how much they want to put in there, how much information, how many examples they want to add. So, there's an example section where it's basically like a method section, and you put all the methods in there with the examples and the results that you get. So it just depends how much information you have. Um, and so yeah, we'll usually draft it. It usually takes, this is like an estimate, around 20 hours on
Okay.
my time to draft what's called the claim. So the claims are the section at the end of the patent that basically is the legal meat of your patent. It's what you're legally claiming is your invention and what the intellectual property is. So usually we start out with just drafting those claims because that helps us write the patent application. So it could be like, we're claiming this small molecule, and it could be the structure of the molecule where you have R groups and you define all the different R groups, right? Something like
Okay.
that. That gets approved by the client, and then you can then go into writing the patent application based off how the claims are written. So you start off, okay, we have the structure. R could be this, but R could also be this. But these groups can also be there. What is the molecule used for? If it's a method of treatment, we can use it for this. We can use it to treat these diseases. And you kind of lay out everything that you want in terms of how do you make it, what the structures are, what the possible combinations, what methods can be used, how do you use it, and you just disclose as much as you can because that's part of getting a patent. You have to be fully disclosing, your best mode, your how do you make it. Basically, everything about your invention needs to be disclosed in the patent.
Okay. Yeah. This is really groovy. This is really cool. So, we have your position now, and we understand, what you do now. So let's go back now. So how do we get into this position, right? So how can we do this? Because something I was thinking about as you were kind of talking about this is that, you're doing a PhD in synthetic organic chemistry, but you have maybe your interests lie elsewhere. So how do you kind of bring this to your advisor? I mean, I've never met Professor Corinna Schindler. I imagine she's a very sweet lady, so perhaps it was a bit easy for you. I don't know. So how'd that conversation go, if at all, that you wanted to take IP classes? Like, how'd that kind of go for you?
I mean, she was supportive of the IP classes. I will say she wanted me to go stay in chemistry because she was like, you're doing great. You should stay in chemistry. I was like, I don't know, Corinne. I don't know if I want to. But she was fully supportive of me taking the classes because at Michigan you have to take different electives. They're called your cognates, and one of the electives was the patent law class. Someone had gotten it approved, so it made sense. If I'm going to take an extra class, I might as well take something that I'm potentially interested in. So maybe seeing if the university offers classes, that could be like one way to start exploring. Again, the tech transfer office sometimes offers fellowships. I don't know if every university does, but that could be a way to explore as well. Contacting them, seeing if there's any opportunities to do some work there. And then otherwise, if you're interested in learning more, just reaching out to people. I'm a big proponent of cold emailing. I did a lot of cold emailing in grad school just because I didn't know patent attorneys and patent agents. So I just looked for people that either went to Michigan, that went to Pomona, or had basically a similar career path and sent them an email saying, this is my background. I'm interested in learning about, your career trajectory, how you decided to follow and pursue this. And people are happy to chat. The worst thing they can do is just ignore your email.
Right.
But most of the time, people want to, help out and explain to you what this career path is and how they got into it. And that gives you a broader perspective of, what's patent prosecution versus something like patent litigation where you're in court and getting those distinctions as well. So you are informing yourself as you move forward.
Have you ever heard of maybe not you personally, but like, have you ever heard of someone where they're a grad student, but they are interested in this type of career, but their advisor's like kind of against it? I don't know if you know someone you've talked to, or
Not that I have heard of.
Yeah,
No.
I would hope that someone wouldn't join a group in general that would discourage it, unless it was told up front that I really discourage you not doing chemistry, basically. So unless that was discussed before joining the group, then I would hesitate that in general, first of all. But let's say so cold emails are great. And if you aren't, by the way, if you aren't like on LinkedIn, you can literally go to LinkedIn, go to like alumni of your universities and like seeing where people work at. So like that's a great tool to look up patent offices, patent agencies, and like just seeing who's there, where they graduate from, and sending them a message on LinkedIn or getting their emails and sending them an email. So what did that email kind of look like? You said you introduced yourself, and then you just said, what your career trajectory looked like, and just
so generally I'd be like, introduce myself, what my background is in, what I'm currently doing for like my PhD, basically stating that I'm interested in pursuing a career in patent law and that I just wanted to, have a conversation with them about their career path and what they do on a day-to-day. Because at this point, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what patent prosecution meant. What's the day-to-day look like? And just kind of being like, would you have time to have a conversation about this? Please let me know. Like, being nice, being cordial, and just kind of just putting it there and just saying, yeah, this is the situation. This is what I'm kind of trying to learn. Would you be able to like get on a call with me and chat about it? And, I'm always happy to do it. I've had many people reach out and I sit on calls and I try to basically what we're doing now and explain to them the whole process, what it is that you're looking to do and how do you do it, get into it and things like that.
I find for the most part, people are pretty receptive of it. Like honestly, like the world really isn't that bad of a place. Like most people are actually pretty helpful, I find.
Yeah.
So, if you're ever interested, just ask someone. I mean, the worst they could do is just not answer,
Exactly. That's it.
Perhaps they're busy. Perhaps you wouldn't want to join that, that patent office anyway. So, it's like just something to keep in mind. Make sure they have good websites too. I don't know, just a little thing sometimes. But okay, maybe you're interested in it, right? So should you take classes? Do you have to take classes? Like what? And then how did you personally balance that? Well, with your chemistry graduate work, because you did mention that you had to take an elective anyway, but in some examples where maybe it's not required to, I mean, were you taking classes while also doing research? Like, how was that balance for you?
Yeah, so if you should take classes, I think you should. I mean, if you're interested in pursuing this career path, just to even gauge if you like the subject matter, yeah, I
Right.
think you should take classes. And then also, I will say for interviews, it's a great talking point because it kind of shows that you are interested in the subject area. You've done something to, get knowledge on it, what it encompasses, like what it actually is. And that's a great when you're doing the interviews because it shows that. I guess if you if you can't take the classes, I mean, I would have a conversation with your advisor, right? It's your PhD. As long as you're getting your work done, I feel like that shouldn't be
Right.
something that should be prohibited. But that is a conversation that you should have. So when I did want to take the higher level strategy class, I did ask Corinne about it because I had already done my elective, and this was just an extra class that I would be taking.
Mm,
And we had that conversation. And classes are what at most an hour, once or twice a week, whatever it is. And so it doesn't cut in too much time, right? As long as you're getting your work done, I think it should be fine. And like as long as you're communicating with your advisor as well and letting them know, this is what I
right.
want to do. I'm not going to drop the ball on the chemistry, but I would like to reserve whatever it is, 1-2 hours a week for this class, and
Yeah.
just making it a conversation, right? And I mean, if it comes to the situation where they're not letting you, then I mean, I feel like that's something then to go talk to administrator or like the chemistry department, like whoever's
You
in
got to go
charge of the
above that.
chemistry department, be like, I would
Yeah.
like to take these classes. This is my career that I want to go forward with. How do we
Yeah.
proceed in this
Mhm.
situation?
That's what I find honestly, for the most part anyway. It's like most of the time, if you're not dropping, as long as you're not dropping the ball, your chemistry, it's like you can kind of do whatever you want in a sense. I mean, I'm being a bit tongue in cheek there, but it's like like as long as, and you kind of know when you're not slacking. Like
Yeah,
if you're already a go getter, you're already a go getter by being in a like PhD, and you're already a go getter by taking these classes. So it's like I don't think you have to worry about you slacking off. Like you're already kind of a go getter in that sense. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So it's like I don't think you have to worry too much, but you also know when you're slacking. Like you know when you're slacking. So just kind of keep that in mind, I guess. But
yeah. It all comes down to time management, basically, just making
yeah.
sure you're managing everything correctly and
hmm
like we said, not dropping the ball.
But so I guess for you it was kind of a good balance. And I mean, how many hours outside of so at the higher level classes then? I mean, how much was that eating away out of your chemistry? I mean, were you kind of like really you seem as someone that's really good at time management, but how was that kind of really cutting into your time? And do you still have free time too? I mean, classes plus grad work. I mean, do you still make time for yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, the first intro class that I took was very straightforward. I think it was 1 or 2 hours a week. So and I think it was a 6 o'clock class, 5 or 6 o'clock class. So it really didn't impact the chemistry on during the day. I would
hmm
just get there a little earlier, make sure I got everything done and headed up to class. I think the more advanced strategy class was also during nighttime. I think it was like a 6 or 7 o'clock class. It was like a seminar. And so like during the day it didn't really impact. I guess the thing was doing the homework and doing the readings, which I would do either at night or on the weekends. But I still had free time to go. Like I like to go to the gym. I like to meet friends, go eat, and like just decompress. And so I did have time because I didn't think they were that big of a commitment where it was like I was drowning in work.
hmm
It was more so like readings and then discussions in class, and then I think each class had like a capstone project that you had to do over the course of the semester. So it
hmm
wasn't too bad. I will say one thing that you should consider if you want to do a tech transfer fellowship, that one is a little more involved because that is about, at least for mine, it was 10 hours a week. So you have to make sure you do that work because it's a job, you're getting paid to do it. And then also make sure you're not dropping the ball with chemistry in that respect too, because that's a little more of a commitment.
That sounds like a
Make-
stretch. 10 hours
Yeah,
a week on top of chemistry.
yeah.
That does not
So
sound
I mean, I used to just do it
possible.
at night because I was like, you know what,
Okay.
whatever, I'll do it at night, and this is what I want to do anyway, or on the weekends. But
Okay.
it's yeah, so it wasn't terrible, but it's like you just have to make sure you can handle that before you
Right.
take something like that on.
Mhm. Now, how about studying for a patent bar exam? I mean, was this done while you were in graduate school, or was it kind of done afterwards? Like, first of all, I guess when did you take it? And had that kind of coincide with what you were already doing chemistry wise?
Yeah, so when the pandemic hit in 2020 and we went into lockdown, I had the great idea of trying to study for this thing, and I was like, I'm going to study it, I'm going to take it. And so there's actually an online course called the PLI patent exam course, and it's an online course that walks you through everything, but they also have like a binder that comes with it. So the course in total is like $2,000 or $3,000. It was very expensive, so I didn't want to
Wow,
buy the course. What I ended up doing was buying the binder off of someone, which is like, I mean, it's like this big. Oh, I thought I had it here, but I don't. I
I
bought the
believe you though.
binder and like read through it basically while we were in lockdown multiple times. Was doing the practice questions. Was really getting well versed. And then I think they started opening the labs again, and that's kind of where I dropped it off, and I like forgot about it and went back into the PhD mode. And it was a little ambitious because I was working at tech transfer, I was doing research, and then also like trying to study,
Jesus
and I was like, that's
Christ.
way too much. So I ended up, I joined the firm, and when I signed my contract, in the contract it says you have like a year and a half to take and pass the patent bar. And what's really nice is they will actually pay or reimburse you for the course. So I bought the
Oh,
course.
okay.
Yeah, they covered it. Sat through all the lectures, read the book again because I had forgotten everything, and kind of went through getting subject matter, learning the chapters. Like I said, you need to know where these chapters are because it's an open book exam. And then I passed it back in March. And so I took the test, and you find out the same day actually. So you finish the test,
Oh, that's nice.
you do a little survey, and basically it either says you passed or it gives you your percentage if you did not pass.
Oh,
And so yeah, so to pass you need a 70%, so that's 70 out of 100 questions, but 10 questions are beta questions, so they don't count. So in reality, you only need to get 63 out of the 100 questions, which is, if you're doing a
okay.
lot of practice questions and knowing how to search for these things, it's doable, but it is difficult to get to that point. Like I did maybe hundreds and hundreds of questions to be able to, okay, this is the question, this is the subject matter, I know it's in this chapter, let me scroll to this section, and then let me try to search within the section.
That's yeah, that's quite the trying to balance all those things at one time. Man. But so how some other things that people might want to consider though, doing this is internships. So was presume the internships came after your graduate degree? You had that kind of, or when did you do your internships, and how do you find them? Right. So
Yeah. So I mean, the tech transfer one I did simultaneously with grad school. I never did an internship with a law firm like
actually,
outside.
real quick, you want to explain what that is? So you saying tech transfer? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I
What
mean, most
exactly is that?
universities have an Office of Technology Transfer, which is basically the office where, like, if you have an invention in the lab and you want to go get a patent or you want to commercialize it, you can then submit a disclosure to that office. And there's licensing specialists there and people that work in the office that then take your disclosure and then start the commercialization process, which is, what is the invention? What's the market for the invention? What can we do with it? Who are the key players? What are companies that maybe want to license this technology to use for themselves? And you also want to maybe do a prior art search. So what a prior art search is, basically just a literature search. What exists in the area that is similar to what the disclosure is, right? If it's a small molecule, maybe you go in SciFinder and do a structure search and see what other chemicals already exist that are similar or maybe exactly the same. And so, they do those reports and then they start working with, it depends on the tech transfer office. But usually they will work with a law firm or outside counsel to then draft the applications and start pursuing, patent applications and patent families for whatever the invention is. So that's what tech transfer is. So people just call it tech transfer. But I don't know if all universities have them, but at least I know most R ones should have a tech transfer office, I would say.
Okay, so you did. So you did that during
Yeah, it
your
was like
degree.
I started my fourth year. So fourth year until I finished my PhD. So fourth and fifth year, I worked there.
Okay, I can't imagine during your dissertation time how that was. I mean, I don't know how you're. How are you? I don't understand how you're balancing all of that. Like, man, that is crazy.
Yeah, I like to be
Um,
busy.
fair, fair. Plus, I guess if you really enjoy it, then you make time for it. And that holds true for anything really. Um, but how competitive are like internship markets? I mean, I know for like pharmaceutical companies, if you're going to get an internship while you're in grad school, you're competing with postdocs and really other high level grad students. Like it's really competitive. So how competitive are the internships for patent agencies?
Yeah, so it just depends. I there's also a thing, a lot of law firms, especially boutique. So boutique law firm is a law firm that's a little smaller and that specializes in a certain area. So I work at an intellectual property boutique, which is we only do intellectual property. A lot of those types of firms will have summer internships for grad students.
Okay.
Mine does not, but I know there's a couple that specifically have programs for engineering, science students that are want to get exposure to patent law and don't have any, they can apply to them and do like basically like a RU that you did in undergrad at a research university, except you're at a law firm for the summer. And you know, I think those are a little more competitive just because they're not as common. It's not as common for a law firm to have those and be targeted specifically towards STEM students.
Hmm.
But they exist. You just have to, go out there and try to find them and identify them. But I would say they're probably, just because they are so scarce, maybe a little more competitive, but there aren't that many of us that actually want to do science and then also go into law. So I don't know. Yeah. So it just depends on how well you can find and how big that firm is and how many students are taking there.
Sure, sure. Well, I guess as we wrap up here, another question I wanted to ask you then is, is kind of law school for me. So, as we've been talking about this, you don't need a law degree to become a patent agent. I guess maybe we should discuss, you know, what are the benefits of having the law degree versus just having a technical PhD, right?
Yeah.
And what are the trade-offs, both financially but also work-wise? So let's kind of dissect this a little bit. So in your position right now, you do not need a law degree.
No.
You just need the patent bar. You just need to pass the patent bar exam.
Correct.
So what's kind of the trade-off then? Well, first of all, are you considering going to law school?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, once you're at a patent agent level, most firms will either have a patent agent track where you just stay as a patent agent, become a senior patent agent, and your career moves up, your compensation goes up the longer you're there, and the more experience you get. But like I said, you can't legally give advice to clients. You can't give opinions. You can't go to court if you want to do litigation. You can support all of these things and work with attorneys, but you can't do that right by yourself. As
And
opposed
that real quick, and that though, you don't need a technical degree for that too. You could be a bachelor's or like a PhD level, right?
Yeah, so it depends. Some firms will hire. Yeah, there's so many different variations of how this
Okay.
can go. So you could, let's say you have a bachelor's, right?
Mhm.
And then you pass the patent bar, and you could get your registration number. You can theoretically apply to patent agent positions. Will you be as competitive as someone with a PhD? Maybe not, right? And so the other option would be your master's. You pass the patent bar. I think a law firms will hire a lot more master's and PhD students than bachelors, but it's not unseen. I've seen some firms that do have postings for like a technical advisor, patent agent role for a bachelor's degree. So there's just different iterations of how you can get there. And so, and then the other track is patent attorney, right? So once you're a patent agent, a lot of firms will actually pay for you to go to law school while you're working for them. And so they'll cover the cost or they'll provide reimbursement. So it's a different firm to firm. And you can then become, night school is usually 4 years, day school is usually 3 years, depending on what the firm allows you to do.
Okay.
That's how long it'll take. And then you become, an associate. But then the thing is, if you don't want to go, let's say you don't want to get your PhD, but you want to go into patent law, you can just go from your bachelor's, which is in the STEM field, and go straight to law school, and then come out as a patent attorney, and
Okay.
get a job as a first year associate at a firm. So there's different combinations of, if you really like research, then yeah, go get your PhD, go get the scientific advisor job, be a patent agent, and then if you want to go to law school, once you start working, you go to law school. Otherwise, if you don't want to do all the research for all those years, go straight to law school with your STEM degree, and then become a patent attorney right off the bat. So it's like it's mix and match, however you want to do it.
Right. Now, for you personally, I mean, you didn't really know about becoming a patent agent, patent attorney prior to going to graduate school. Looking back on it now, I mean, would you still have done graduate school? I mean, like, in all honesty, I mean, would you have still done it if this was the ultimate goal? Or
I think so. I think so because, if my end goal is to be a patent attorney, I think having the PhD is really appealing to clients because they know the technical matter really well, as opposed to just having a bachelor's degree. Not to say that the people with bachelors don't understand the technical matter, but like a PhD, you're in the lab.
There's a different level. No,
Yeah, it's a different level of understanding and thinking, and being able to identify problems or solutions with what the technical subject matter is that is just unparalleled. So that is more attractive to clients. And so if you want to be a patent attorney, I think at the end of the day, probably a PhD is a little better. But it depends, right? It just differs for everyone and what they like. If you don't like research, then don't do it. But it is, I think, a little more appealing to clients to see that as well.
Yeah, because I guess I don't really understand how you earn your revenue. Is it from the amount of clients you have? Like, I don't even really.
So all the work we do, so we have billable hours. So that's something we haven't talked about. So as patent agents, as attorneys, as associates, whatever you are, in the law firm, we have to bill clients for our time.
Okay.
So if I spend 20 hours on the patent application, I bill the client 20 hours. And you have different billing rates depending on how senior you are, depending if you're a lawyer, depending if you're an agent. And so those are all, different variables. But based off of your billing time and your billable rate, that's how you charge the client. That's how you make money, right? So there's obviously normal fees that go along with filing a patent application, which the client covers. But then they're also paying for your time and your fees, right? You sat there and you read the office action and you came up with 4 or 5 different pathways to move forward, but you have to bill them for that because that was your time of thinking and coming up with solutions for the client. Right. So that's billable time right there. And so different projects like that, some projects take a little more time, so you bill higher for the client. Like an opinion will take anywhere from 50 to 100 hours, depending on how many
Okay.
patents you're reviewing. And so you're billing the client. If your bill rate is like 300, that's a lot of money right there
Mhm.
for those 100 hours. So it just depends. And so that's how law firms make their money.
Okay.
You know?
Now, as we kind of wrap up, what's kind of next for you then? So you have you passed your bar exam. You're working at an agency right now. I mean, are you gonna go to? Hopefully, they're gonna pay for law school. What's kind of next for you then?
I'm still debating, whether or not I actually want to go to law school. I'm leaning towards a yes. I think going to law school opens a lot more opportunities in terms of the type of work that you can do. Like you can do the opinions by yourself. You can give legal advice. You can go out there and do client development. You can potentially do litigation. I've never tried patent litigation, but it's something I'm interested in trying as well. And so I think it opens a lot more doors of what you can do. And also, you don't have to work at a law firm. That's something that we also forgot to mention. You don't have to exactly work at a law firm as a patent agent. You can work in-house at Merck or Lilly or whatever it is, whatever the
Mm-hmm.
pharma company is, because they do have positions for patent agents. They even have positions for kind of a technical advisor, scientific role. When I was interviewing, there was actually one startup that was hiring a position for
Okay.
the similar role at a law firm, and it was just in-house, and so it was a lot more intertwined with the chemistry group. So you were sitting in on chemistry meetings and kind of guiding the chemistry based on the intellectual property that's out there. So those are a little more rare to find, but they do exist. So if you don't want the law firm feel, and the thing is, in-house positions don't have billable hours. Your only client is that startup or that pharmaceutical company. So you
Okay.
don't have to bill. You just work normal 9 to 5 or whatever it is, and you're just working on their matters. And so that's also a difference to consider. Some
That's
people do,
nice. That'd
yeah,
be
some
nice.
people do law firms for a couple of years and then they switch over and they're like, okay, I want to go in-house because I want to just focus on one client, have the overall broad picture, and have a common goal as
It's
opposed to
probably
having
more streamlined then too,
yeah,
right? It's like everything is kind of in house, so everything's more
yeah,
streamlined.
yeah, and I think more collaborative between the different departments because I'm sure you have to talk to marketing, talk to the business development, talk to the chemists or the scientists that are working there.
Mm-hmm.
Versus at a law firm, you're mostly talking to lawyers and then maybe sometimes talking to the inventors or the
Mm-hmm.
clients.
Now, people that have spoken to who have gone to law school, I mean, how does it compare or contrast with graduate school in chemistry? I mean, like what, I assume it's a lot more reading. Like, I don't know what you've kind of heard about that, like the kind of the differences.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple of people who have done both. I think they said mentally is like and emotionally, a PhD is a little more difficult because there's so much writing on your experiments and finishing that degree up. Versus law school is difficult in a different way because there's a lot of like as you said, a lot of reading. I've heard that sometimes classes are just one exam the whole semester, so you got to make sure
Mm.
you
Oh, jeez.
understand the whole subject area, understand all the cases that you've learned and how to apply that. Make outlines. I know people do that a lot, so it's difficult in its own way, right?
Yeah.
But it's not like you just work 5 weeks and then you knocked over your vial and then there goes 5 weeks worth of like I've had that happen and it was devastating. So
No.
it's like
Oh
I'm going
my
home. I was like I'm
god.
going home, or like I accidentally flushed my product off the biotage and it's into the waste. So now I got to go water that
Oh
2 liters
my.
of waste to get it out. So you don't run into those problems in law school, but it has its own challenges of being able to understand case law,
Mhm.
understand how to think like a lawyer and like how to approach those types of problems.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like if I go, we can do like a part two in the future, and I can let you know
How we could
what the
walk through.
difference is.
You could
Yeah, what the
you
difference
could
is, and
vent. You can vent about law school on here.
yeah, definitely no knocked over vials in law school though. So that's
I can't even imagine that. We're knocking over, working on something for 5 weeks and it's just down the drain. I've not had that happen to me, and
oh, you have it? No, yeah, I was like all hands on deck, benchtop extraction. Getting paper towels, soaking them in solvent, and doing. I recovered part of my product, so I wasn't
yeah.
bad. It wasn't terrible, but
Well, I don't do natural processes, so I never had the pressure of like, oh, I need this like stocking up material. I've never
yeah.
really had that pressure. But man, I don't want that pressure, so I'll pass. Yeah, but I think with that, Mario, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was extremely insightful, and I think a lot of people are going to find this really helpful. And hopefully it opens up a career path that people didn't even think was possible. Before today. I certainly I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, but I had no idea what it took. So very insightful today. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. So hopefully, like we said, hopefully it inspires some people to pursue or, even think about a little bit a different career
Yeah,
path. It doesn't have to be patent law, but
yeah.
there's other things out there that you can do. And, if people see this and want to reach out, feel free to reach out. And I'm happy to chat more, go more into details if they want to. But yeah,
I
I
was
love
gonna
talking.
say if something a career like this sounds interesting to someone, please feel free to reach out to Mario. I mean, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer these
Yeah, I
questions.
love chatting about it. I have like my advisor says I'm bringing people to the IP side, like the dark side, because every time I go back, I'm
Yeah.
like, have you thought about patent law? Because it's a good career path.
It's funny. I remember I took a med chem class here as one of my required courses, and towards the very end of it, part of the discussion was actually about the patent agencies. Like, actually, if you have a pharmaceutical drug, actually what goes into the patents, and that was a very interesting discussion. I was like, this is really really interesting because it's articulate and it's a different way of thinking about science. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
I will plug before we finish. I will say
yeah,
I think every scientist needs to, or every researcher needs to take a patent law class because whether you go into academia or industry, if you go into academia, you're probably going to get a patent maybe at some point. You go into industry, you're definitely going to get patents and bring products to market. So I feel like all scientists should take a class, at least one, just to
I'm gonna
understand
look
the
into it
basics.
now.
Yeah,
I'm gonna like audit. I'm gonna see what we have here at Houston because I'm
yeah, I think you should because like at the end of the day, if you're going to be in the lab creating things, you're going to get some type of patent or intellectual property protection on it.
mhm.
So I think it makes sense to at least just brush yourself up with like what actually is it and like how does it work.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna do that now. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm gonna look into it now, and then yeah, I'm gonna do that. So you heard it here, folks. I'm gonna take a look at this patent law class. Is it? It is. I mean, yeah, you bring up great points. I mean, you're gonna come across it sometime, and just knowing the language, like it might go a long way. So,
Exactly.
but yeah, with that, Mario, thank you so much. Really insightful. Good luck on your future path. I wish you the best, and so, yeah, thank you again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right, guys, we'll see you on the next episode.